Welcome to Fantasy Focus. Today's live stream show is presented by Hotwire. You can watch us every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN's Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube feeds, as well as the ESPN app. And if you're listening to the audio feed, today's podcast is presented by Geico. You can download Fantasy Focus wherever you get your podcasts. And with that, we say hello and happy Friday to you all. It is August 20th. Field, Matthew, Stephania, and Daniel all hanging out with you on a Friday. Got a busy show ahead. We're going to do a double trouble involving the final two NFC South teams, the Panthers and the Falcons.
Sure.
And we'll recap. It's kind of weird. Am I misremembering? But there was just one preseason game last night. I don't remember too many standalone Thursday night preseason games. Am I making that up?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Listen, I was told there'd be no memory.
Yeah, that's fair, Matthew.
I was told I could just show up and talk about the future. I wasn't going to have to talk about the past.
Yeah, that's fair.
Stephania, I have a question for you.
Oh.
Good morning, Stephania Bell.
Hopefully I have an answer.
Good morning, Stephania Bell.
Who would you say is dressed better today, Matthew or me?
It's one of those, you know how they have that
Who
wore it best? Yeah.
Right.
Who wore it best? I might need to see you guys standing up and posing side by side, striking a pose.
Maybe
Let's
we
see
could
just
do
a
like
one shot on field
you know,
real quick.
It's really not fair to compare.
For people on the audio
clothing.
podcast, or for the listening to the audio stream, they both have a shirt that says "Free the Mullet"
Yeah,
on
we
there
do.
right now.
This is shout out to the Ocho. The Ocho had the National Mullet Championships. We talked about it, and off of that, fan of the show, friend of yours reached out.
Cousin, actually. A
cousin.
distant cousin.
Okay.
Griffey Van Meter, I call him Griffey Cakes, NBD.
Okay.
Who actually had the pleasure of meeting Mike Clay this past week at the Fantasy Football Expo out in Canton, Ohio. Huge fan
He
of the
waited
show.
in the line. He
Yeah,
waited
yes.
he waited the
He paid.
hour-long line to get to
Yes.
see Mike Clay.
He greased up the bouncer who was
Yeah.
like protecting
Nice.
Mike from all the autograph seekers and was like, here's $100.
That's impressive. Not everyone got past the velvet rope, from what I understand.
Yes, Mike was
He
a
was
hot
sitting
ticket.
there. He was
Yeah.
sitting there in the chair. You know, he's surrounded by groupies and everything like that, and like he would point in the crowd, and just like the bouncer would look at him and say like that one, and Mike would be like no, and then he'd like he'd give the wave to a couple of people. So
Yeah, Mike Clay's
props
doing
to,
that,
Props
for
to
sure.
Griffey for letting Mike pass the velvet rope past all the groupies to get a quick selfie.
He got a very good selfie, and he also has shades of Ryan Fitzpatrick with his beard, which was part of the reason when we were talking about the mullets. It was the same day we were discussing Washington and New England.
Sure.
After they played, Cole Holcomb, linebacker for the Washington football team, has a great mullet. Aw,
I just
cute.
saw the Chirons on our live stream. Again, if you're listening to it, we love that everyone listens to the show, but I will say you do miss some fun from the show if you don't see it visually. They just put up Chirons. I don't know who did that, but it just said, Matthew Berry, 20+ years experience as a dad. Field Yates, 0 years experience.
Minus 5 months.
As
right.
a
Minus
dad.
5 months. Yeah.
The truth is I don't actually have 20 years experience as a dad.
Well, that's
Ooh.
true. Yes, but I guess that's a
Yes.
technicality. But
It is a technicality.
but your
yeah.
blended family.
We have a blended family, so yeah.
And they're wonderful, wonderful boys that are in
Yeah.
your life on top of your girls as well.
That's correct. No, what I was just saying is,
But
my wife and I got together 13 years ago, so I've had 13 years experience as a dad.
I mean, Beth might tell you it feels more like 30 years, so maybe we can meet in the middle and say that 20 is accurate.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, if you ask Beth, she's been married for 50 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I have
That's not even
whatever.
50 years old. Come on, man.
I know. No, I understand. It just feels like it. Like, listen, being married to me is no cake, no walk in the park.
I'm not surprised to hear
I
that.
can't-
like,
yeah.
you only have to spend an hour a day with me every day.
I
Imagine
gotta
the
be
rest of
honest.
your life.
Really quickly, though, I
Yeah.
love both of your shirts, but Stephania's shirt really brings it home for me because Stephania's shirt says, "Let's drink wine and judge people." And I feel like that's just the perfect shirt for a Friday show with Matthew.
Really
There you
is.
go.
And we're trying to make it a thing this year, Fun Shirt Friday. So if you feel like sending Stephania shirts about wine and judging people, or just you have cool fun shirts like Daniel's Hawaiian shirt,
Yes.
hit us up.
Please
Let's-
tag us on
yes.
Twitter. Like Jackson, we would love to see your fun shirts that you're wearing as a part of us doing this on the show. So please send them along.
Hey, but question for you, real quickly. Let's give your cousin a shout out. Like, if anyone wants to buy a Free the Mullet T-shirt, where are they going to do that?
Glad that you mentioned that. KY for KY. He has a general store in Kentucky, which is like iconic down there. And the website's KY for KY. And just Google it if you can't find it directly through that link. But they sell hilarious T-shirts left and right, not the least of which is the Free the Mullet T-shirt.
Yeah, it's ironic that I'm wearing a Free the Mullet T-shirt, considering that most of my hair has been freed quite some time ago.
You have
You're on
I mean,
fire today.
you are good today,
You're on
Matthew
fire
Bennett.
today. I like
you
Friday
don't have to sound
Matthew.
surprised.
This
but
is
thanks.
great.
All
he
right.
has a different kind of bi-level haircut than the mullet. So
Exactly. That is true. Sad but true. I have an old man mullet.
Off the rails.
Let's do this.
Oh my
Let's do this. People want to hear us talk about football finally.
Let's talk about
Let's
football.
go.
all right, let's get into football. And I mentioned we'll do double trouble in just a bit, but there was one Thursday night preseason game. Kyle informs me that back in 2018, the Eagles and the Browns played a 5-0 preseason game. Many remember that as one of the most iconic preseason games in NFL history. So the story of the night last night.
Apparently, it's the Eagles. When you want a standalone game on a Thursday night for preseason,
Yep.
you go with the Birds.
So I want to quickly, you go with the Birds. Let me quickly give a couple pieces of context on last night's game. So Jalen Hurts warmed up, looked like he was going to play last night for the Eagles, and then moments before kickoff, the team announced he was not going to play due to a non-COVID related illness. He went to the hospital because he was having some stomach pains. Once Jalen Hurts got ill, Nick Sirianni, their head coach, subsequently decided to not play their 3 top starting offensive linemen. The Eagles were not playing nearly as many key players last night as the Patriots were. We did see Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor and Miles Sanders and others, but the Patriots we saw much more of. So for our purposes, the story of today's recap is what we saw from New England. And Matthew, last year,
Before we move off of that, though, what I will just say is that I think that even though Jalen Hurts didn't play last night, I think Jalen Hurts improved his stock.
yeah, he did solidify the status
I mean,
as the starter.
I'm just saying, like, they got a good long look at Nick Mullins and Joe Flacco, and all due respect to those two fine gentlemen. No, Joe Flacco's a Super Bowl champion, but barring some kind of weird trade, as we've said all along, Jalen Hurts is going to be the starter, and honestly probably has a pretty long leash.
I would agree on that. No doubt about it. I mean, and you hear more and more about how he's the guy. The
Yep.
players recognize him as the guy. Even if he hasn't been announced, he is the guy. Stephania, what do you got?
I said one thing. Nick Mullins, obviously a backup in San Francisco. A lot of people don't realize he's coming off elbow surgery, and he really was just working up his volume of throwing before he got to Philly. So even if it doesn't work out there, Nick Mullins still has talent. But I think the rough start is reflection of him just coming off rehab right now.
And last thing I'll say about Nick Mullins, fun fact. He's the second most passing yards in NFL history through his first 16 starts. Number 1, Patrick Mahomes. Pretty good company there for Nick Mullins. So you name a quarterback, not named Patrick Mahomes, and they had fewer passing yards in their first 16 starts than Nick Mullins.
Pretty
Let's
impressive.
get to New England, though,
And yet
Matthew.
now, but life comes at you fast because now he's competing with Joe Flacco for a backup gig.
Yeah, so it's preseason. Take it with a massive
From
grain of salt.
going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes to now going toe-to-toe with Joe Flacco.
It's a preseason game, so
Yes,
definitely the context is important. The Eagles were not playing many of their key starting defensive players. That being said, Cam Newton was a starting quarterback for the Patriots last night, Matthew. And when you hear Bill Belichick say repeatedly, Cam's a starting quarterback, it's nights like last night that reaffirm that. And it has nothing to do with Mac Jones, by the way, because we'll talk about Mac in a second. But Cam looked sharp last night.
Yep.
Cam looked good. He threw the football effectively down the field. He had a 28-yard throw to Jacoby Myers. And as Jeff Darlington and others pointed out on Twitter, when Cam launches a fastball, who throws the fastest pitch right now in the MLB? Who is it? Aroldis Chapman still? Somebody like that. I'm sure
Sure.
Kyle knows.
Yeah.
Somebody who throws absolute gas. Maybe Craig Kimbrell. I don't know who it is.
Right.
But whoever that is,
Who's the young Matthew Berry of MLB right now?
yeah, he's like righty and no mullet Randy Johnson as a quarterback,
Yes,
right?
right.
Throws a fastball. So Cam looked good as a thrower last night, and I thought that he gave more credence to the idea that when Bill Belichick says he's going to be the starter, that's not going to change despite what Mac Jones has done thus far in preseason. Agree?
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I also feel like Bill Belichick, I think people mistake coaches in general. Some coaches lie to the media, or mislead the media, I should say, aren't as forthcoming with the media. I don't think that's Belichick. Now, Belichick can be short and curt with the media.
Yeah.
He's not super charming and friendly at times with the media, but I don't think of him as somebody that dodges a question or misleads the media. You know what I mean? There are coaches that do that. I don't think Belichick's one of those coaches. And I think sometimes people just put coaches as like, you can't believe anything a coach says. And as we've talked about, Mike Tomlin is another guy who's pretty much a straight shooter with the press.
Yeah.
And I think Belichick is as well. He's not expansive with the press.
Agreed.
But when he answers a question, I think he's usually pretty genuine about it.
Seems to be the same. I feel the same way. And along those lines, I do think that Cam Newton still trends towards being the week 1 starter in New England. And I thought it looked good, Matthew. So there is a glimmer of hope that Cam Newton keeps that job throughout the year. And if what we saw last night, I'll say it 50 times in this show, one preseason game against not the Eagles starters persists, then you could see a path to Cam Newton being a pretty darn effective fantasy quarterback this year because he threw the football well without their 2 tight ends who we know are going to be a big part of their offense. And he did not run that much last night, but that when the Patriots have the football from the 5-yard line or in, I would contend that maybe other than Derrick Henry, he's still the best finisher as far as runners go in the NFL, or he's right there in the mix at least.
There's no question about that. I have a question for you.
Okay.
You and I, tomorrow night will actually be the draft. Tonight will be the draft order for our War Room League,
right?
Which is the War Room is what is the room in which we all watch the football games together is called the War Room, hence the name of the league. But it's a 16-team PPR league, as we've discussed. You, I, Stephania are all in the league, among many others. Shefty, Mort, et cetera, Lou Riddick, Teddy Bruschi. Mina Kimes joining the league this year. So here's my question to you. Does Cam Newton get drafted? That's a 16-team league where you only play one quarterback. Most teams tend to draft 2 because there's just so little depth.
Right. Yes, he does.
Does Cam Newton get drafted?
I think he does.
Does Mac Jones get drafted?
Yes, because we're going to talk about him in a second.
Okay, so now my question is, does Mac Jones get drafted by the same team that drafts Cam Newton? Meaning, if you're in a deep league, if you're in a deep enough league, and if you draft Cam Newton, do you also need to grab Mac Jones?
I don't think so. And here's the reason why, is that because if Mac Jones eventually takes over for Cam Newton, it probably is because Cam has sputtered to the point where he's no longer effective, which means in fantasy that you're going to have a 2 or 3 week stretch where you're putting Cam out there begrudgingly.
So that's super interesting because I don't know if it was a mistake or not, but you just said if. You used the word if Mac Jones replaces Cam Newton because I believe when it comes to Trey Lance, when it comes to Justin Fields, those guys, it's not if, it's when.
Yeah,
I agree with those two
Mac
things.
too.
You think it is when for Mac, not if.
Yeah, I think
if Cam Newton's playing at a high level.
Yeah, well, I mean, if he plays at a high level, because I think they're going to be pretty good this year.
I agree with that.
And it's a Bill Belichick coach team.
Of
very
course.
much looks much better defensively. So, yes. If you made me choose right now, Mac Jones is starting at some point this year. If you made me choose, but the difference between Andy Dalton at his best and Jimmy Garoppolo at his best, would you agree that Cam Newton at a high level is a whole different quarterback than either of those two?
He's a former NFL MVP. He's a former Super Bowl starting quarterback, of course.
That's why I hedged a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. No, and that's why I'm asking, do you need to – my point is if you're in a 2-quarterback league, a Superflex league, a deep league, and you draft you're probably going to draft Justin Fields or Trey Lance before either of those guys. But, I've seen some leagues where you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to grab Garoppolo or grab Dalton, and boom, fine. I have the Bears starting quarterback in this super deep league. I don't know that you necessarily need to do that with Mac Jones and Cam Newton. And I'm also as much as I see the positivity of Cam Newton, we'll move off here in a second, Daniel, but I'll just say that, I'd rather Taysom Hill. I'd rather who's a similar quarterback on some level, in that he gets a lot of fantasy points with his legs as well. Also in a precarious starting position, has another viable player on the team that could start for his team. I think I'd rather have Taysom Hill than Cam Newton.
Yeah, that's really close.
Those are two guys that are not basically being drafted in ESPN.
Yeah, that's really close. I think I'd probably lean towards Cam only because there's the chance that you could get the upside of both running and throwing with Cam, right? Cam's a better thrower,
you can get
obviously.
You can get that with Taysom Hill, too.
Right, but I'm saying I think
he's
there's more
a better
upside
thrower.
as a thrower, right? That's my thought. I don't know. I mean, it's close. I don't know that there's I don't know that I have a strong take between those two.
I think I lean Hill toward because I think there's a better chance he keeps the job all year long than Cam. I think there's a better chance he stays healthy all year than Cam. And I like the weapons, weirdly enough, in New Orleans.
Really?
Yeah, I get it with Jacoby Myers and Jonnu Smith. They added some pieces this offseason, but
really?
I guess
Think about that one a little bit more longer.
Kamara,
Other than Alvin
Latavius
Kamara,
Murray, and I get it. Assuming a healthy Michael Thomas, that has to assume Michael Thomas, and I'm a big Adam Trotman guy, so it's close on the weapons around them. Anyway,
let's talk about Mac Jones just really quickly on Mac
sir.
Jones because we got to get double trouble here in a second. But all I'm gonna say is Mac Jones looks good, man. Mac Jones, he is a sniper with that football, man. That ball goes where it needs to go, and.
Yeah. Let's hear it for dad bods.
The pre-draft, yeah, he's getting there though. He's going to look chiseled soon, maybe. I don't know. The pre-draft rhetoric was unfair to a lot of the quarterbacks. It always is, right?
Sure.
Because many people believe that taking Mac Jones at number 3 overall would have been a reach. It became sort of in vogue to just lump Mac Jones as he's clearly number 5 of those 5 quarterbacks. The guy completed 78% of his passes last year at Alabama, threw for 4,500 yards. And I get it. The weapons are awesome. But let's remind everybody, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, to a man when asked, which quarterback would you prefer, Tua or Mac Jones? Which is one of those questions that 98% of the time the answer is, hey, I love them both. Both were Mac Jones. Mac's the man, right? He is not merely a byproduct of his circumstances. Interesting player in keeper leagues especially.
I completely agree, and I don't know if you remember this, but we talked pre-draft. We did a podcast, and I would tell anyone that asked, people would ask me, what do you want Washington to do? Because Washington, I think, picked 19th in the draft this past year, and I was just I'm really hoping Mac Jones falls to them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
He would have been great for them.
Listen,
right?
and we ended up getting Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I'm super excited. But obviously, at 38 years old, Ryan Fitzpatrick is in the future of the team. We will see what I think the jury is still out on whether Taylor Heineke can be a true starting franchise quarterback. But I was really hoping that Mac Jones would fall to 19 because a lot of early mocks had him falling that far, and so he ended up going to the Patriots at 15.
I want to save the idea of maybe just put this somewhere in an idea bucket of at the end of the preseason, if we have a 1 extra day or 20 minutes on a show, just players that aren't on the redraft radar are simply guys that we have interest in Dynasty might be intriguing. Ramondre Stevenson will be on that list. We'll talk about him at a later point. Last thought I will say about this game last night. I need to change my tune a little bit on Jacoby Myers. I think he's the Patriots wide receiver that you want. And I know that we say and I don't blame anybody for saying this, he's a good receiver for the Patriots. Mm-hmm. I think he might be a good NFL receiver. Yeah. Not a great one, but a good NFL receiver.
If Jacoby Myers ends up with more than 100 targets this year, are you going to be shocked?
I was thinking more 125.
I'm just saying, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there's an easy path to 100, 125 targets there that basically isn't being drafted or is going really late in your draft.
Yeah.
Last thing for me on this game here, and I apologize if I'm going to mispronounce his name. I don't think I'm going to, but Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah.
He's going to be a problem. Are you what? You
Way
just
to
implying
go.
that I pronounced it correctly?
I know. We just talked about him, but
15
that's cool.
shows in. That
That's
was pretty
cool.
good.
We were live, and you just gave it a shot, and you crushed it, man.
Thank you.
This is one of your best shows, seriously, this entire year. You're doing such a great job.
Can I leave now? Can I just
Yeah, we
can I
got
just say
40 more minutes
can I
left.
just
Yeah,
peace
we got
out and
40
be
minutes.
thank you, America, I'm gone?
Yeah.
God
Ramondre
bless.
Stevenson, remember that name, Field? We should talk about him later in the season.
I agree, Stephania.
Okay.
No, what I had said, and apparently was very intriguing, was that does he have redraft value right now? I don't think so.
Right.
I think he's a really interesting name
No,
in Dynasty.
No.
I think we should put him in a category of guys that I'm not sure I'm drafting them right now, but I want to talk about them at some point because they will either be a factor in 2022 or late in 2021.
Yes. No, I know you were saying, if we have 20 minutes left on a podcast at some point in the preseason here.
Yeah.
But I guess what I was trying to bring up, and I was more focused on trying to figure out how to pronounce his name correctly than phrasing how I brought it up specifically. But I guess my point was just merely that I understand you don't say you need to draft him now in a redraft league. But do you think he gets enough run to be a problem for Damian Harris or Sony Michel or James White or the guys that might be drafted in leagues? Especially Damian Harris is getting drafted.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's RB 30, 31.
Yeah,
I think so. Because I honestly think like there's a chance that if we see a Patriots running back emerge as a top 20 player over the next couple of years at his position, it is Stevenson, because he's a better receiver than Damian Harris is.
Right.
So again, it might be a year away, but I think it's an interesting name. And I want to keep thinking of names like this that maybe maybe we're talking about them by week 8 of this season, maybe not at all, but I think he's kind of,
because that versatility will certainly help. One of the challenges the Patriots have is that, generally speaking, James White comes in, it's a passing play, right?
Yeah.
Damian Harris or Sonny Michel comes in, I guess they're running it.
Yep.
And so, the versatility of Stevenson would certainly help that offense.
yes, agree on that. I'll talk about the Panthers first and double trouble in just a minute, but first, DeAndre Hopkins, not one of those guys that we'll talk about like at the end of the preseason, because he elevates his game on the field, which is why he's a top fantasy football choice this year. And off the field, he elevates his skincare game with Oars and Alps. Oars and Alps is a premium men's skincare brand that provides wonderful and natural derived skincare with real results. It's awesome. Oars and Alps products are carefully formulated to support an active lifestyle and is the preferred choice for top athletes like all-pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins and fantasy analysts like me, Field. As somebody who believes in self-care and has a regular skincare routine, I've been a fan of Oars and Alps for a while now. Their deodorant also smells amazing. It's also not just because they provide high-quality skincare products that are perfect for the on-the-go lifestyle, but also because of what they stand for. Oars and Alps has been working on their SPF formula for 4 years, bringing the best possible SPF line that they could make. It's free of harsh chemicals, easy to use, and specifically designed for those that are active. When your wife is pregnant and she's constantly looking at what is going into products that she is using or eating, like her food, trust me, this kind of stuff matters. Right now, ESPN Fantasy Football listeners can receive a free Hydrating Oxidant SPF 50 spray, which is named Men's Health Best Sunscreen of 2021 when you buy any 2 Oars and Alps best-selling products. All you need to do is visit oursandalps.com/fantasyfootball and follow the instructions.
I used that sunscreen this last weekend. Field was pretty
I
fantastic.
was trying to figure out why you did not melt, because it was hot this past
It was
weekend.
real hot, but it was fantastic sunscreen. I'm going to tell you that much right now. I'm curious, do you own or rent your home?
Yep.
Well, sure you do. And I bet it can be hard work too, but you know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. And it's a good thing too, because you already have so much to do around the house. So go to geico.com, get a quote, see just how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
All right, time now for some double trouble.
Double trouble. Double trouble. Double trouble. Double trouble.
As of this moment, they're on double secret probation.
Let's begin in Carolina, where Sam Darnold was traded this offseason to the Panthers. And Matthew, we all watched Sam Darnold for 3 years. Not much in the way of fantasy relevance. Probably more miscues than highs. And yet, the Panthers, who were in prime position to take a Mac Jones or a Justin Fields, decided not to draft either of those quarterbacks.
Right.
And instead made a move well in advance of the draft for Sam Darnold. At that point, they took themselves out of every race, right?
Sure.
Should their confidence give me enough confidence to consider Sam Darnold a true fantasy sleeper this year?
I believe so.
Okay.
So, I mean, he made my love list. Yeah,
Oh,
he was
interesting.
in the others receiving votes. He
Right.
was in the
Okay.
others
I was
receiving
gonna say,
votes
I
section of
think
my
I saw it in the
my
loves.
love list.
Yeah.
Love list. I haven't ranked QB 21. I'm higher than the consensus. He's going undrafted in over 95% of leagues, and I have him as a, draftable QB2 at QB 21.
I've got him at 24.
You've got him at 24. Daniel did not rank him. Daniel hates him with a fiery passion.
I
Weird.
love Sam
With
Darnold.
a fiery passion.
Really?
I really like Sam Darnold this year.
You like 25 players more, apparently.
I do. I mean, I listened to so many first draft podcasts with Field and Mel and Todd, and they talked about Sam Darnold all the time. But you're right. I did like
downloaded
25.
Love him.
They love Sam Darnold. So I like 25 quarterbacks more.
So, all right. A lot of times, usually, we talk statistics. Give some stats.
Right.
This one's a gut call.
I totally agree. This is exactly what I'm getting
This
at.
is a total gut call. Here's a guy that when he came out of college was highly, highly thought of.
Third overall pick.
Third overall pick. And I believe he came out the year that Barkley came out, right?
One pick behind Saquon.
Right. And the Giants, who desperately needed a quarterback to take over for Eli Manning, were roasted for not taking Sam Darnold.
Yep.
Because again, the consensus was this guy's a clear franchise quarterback. Now, again, it's easy to sort of pick on Adam Gase, but the fact is that in offenses he's had that weren't helmed by Peyton Manning, he has struggled in the NFL.
Yep.
The numbers when he was an offense coordinator in Chicago, some of those players are down from when they were previously when he took over. And obviously the Jets, Miami was a lost situation in Miami, lost situation in the Jets. People often point to Ryan Tannehill and his success now at Tennessee once he sort of got away from Adam Gase.
Even Kalen Balaj, Devontae Parker, a couple of guys.
I mean,
right?
there's a lot of guys that have certainly blossomed. Robbie Anderson. I mean, Robbie Anderson was decent with the Jets, but
he got better.
He got better in Carolina. Okay. So now Sam Darnold is the latest player, big name player, to no longer be coached by Adam Gase. So 2 things. Let's just put Sam Darnold off for a second. First, if you think about this offense, last year with Teddy Bridgewater under center, they were 14th in pass percentage, 11th in percentage of yards coming from the pass. They threw a lot last year. Mm-hmm. And that was a year in which they didn't have Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
And they had a quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater who would have been perfect for Christian McCaffrey because Teddy Bridgewater is very accurate but likes to throw short. Okay. We sit here and we talk about Joe Burrow and we're like, wow, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Sam Darnold's going to have DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey, and Terrace Marshall, who's lighting up camp, a very creative play caller in Joe Brady. Like, if Sam Darnold's even competent, I think that team puts up numbers because you think about what Carolina likes to do. They've got speed out the wazoo, but, with those guys, with Anderson and McCaffrey and DJ Moore. And, so finding ways to get those guys in space and get yards after the catch. So there's going to be, free yards, I think, for everywhere for Sam Darnold. Now imagine, what if Sam Darnold's actually good? What if Sam Darnold is the guy we all thought he was coming out of college, that every scout backwards and forwards was just like, this guy's the real deal. So I'm buying into that narrative that getting out of leaving Adam Gase's system, and more importantly, by the way, just leaving the New York market, where it was a franchise that had a lot of challenges to it, that was talent depleted, and being in the New York market as the number one pick for a team and the number 3 overall pick in the NFL draft. There's, as a young guy, I think he's 21 or something like that when he was drafted.
He's only 23 still.
I mean, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I am on Sam Darnold this week. I'm on Sam Darnold this year as a sleeper. I think the Panthers offense is going to be one of the better offenses in the NFL. I like that offense as a whole to target, and it starts with Sam Darnold.
You made the case exceptionally well. I feel very similarly about Sam Darnold. Stephania, I think you wanted to add something on young Sam.
Sam started the last 2 years with a couple of injuries. I think people forget. Yeah. And one was an injury. It was an illness a couple of years ago when he had mono.
Yeah.
And so coming off of that, I mean, you guys, I don't know if all of you have had mono, but you are exceptionally fatigued. It takes a long time to get your conditioning back. I mean, he was really kind of playing in a fog initially coming back from that. Then the shoulder issue last year made it tough to throw. So honestly, really tough for him start to the season. So just imagine if he comes in healthy in this new situation. I think there's a lot of things in his favor.
I agree. There are things, and there's incredible quarterback depth. Again, he's still quarterback 24 for me, but it wouldn't surprise me if the real-life narrative surrounding Sam Darnold and this trade looks much more favorable by the middle of this season. Let's be quick on Christian McCaffrey, because we're all in agreement on Christian McCaffrey as the consensus number 1 overall pick. Here's the stat. There's a million different ways to spin it, right? Mm-hmm. Here's my stat about Christian McCaffrey. And then Sophia's going to have her say her piece on this. Over the past 2 seasons, Christian McCaffrey has played in just 19 games.
Okay.
He's the 5th highest scoring running back over the past 2 seasons. Zeke Elliott?
In 19 games.
In 19 games. Zeke Elliott, pretty good player, right?
Yeah, sure.
Pretty darn good. Never had lower than a 12th best season amongst running backs.
Yeah, of course.
26 fewer points than Christian McCaffrey during that time. And Zeke has missed 1 game.
Exactly. McCaffrey is the 101. He's the 101. He's
So
the number 1 running back. He's the number 1 overall player for all of us on the show. The only question about Christian McCaffrey is, this is a guy that prior to last year literally had never missed a practice due to injury, let alone a game. So the question becomes, Stephania, is Christian McCaffrey suddenly injury prone, or was he unlucky?
He was unlucky. And he actually said that when he was talking to the media when they first got back to training camp. And he laid it out exactly like you said. He had never missed any time. This is a guy who takes exceptionally good care of himself. He knows how to train. And he said he didn't change anything in his regimen because he didn't believe that there was a reason to. It was really just that he was unlucky. He had a high ankle sprain, you guys remember, early in the season, and it took him a while to come back. He was out after week 2. He didn't come back until week 9. And then when he did, he actually looked really good in that game. So the ankle injury was not a factor. It was just late in that game. He ended up with a shoulder separation. He goes out, and then we don't see him again for the rest of the season because while he was rehabbing that, he ended up with a thigh strain. I mean, it was just sort of a bad year. And it's really tough when you're trying to come back in after big injuries. Sometimes you just can't get fully healthy. So time was on his side once he got the summer retrain. I saw him at camp. I was standing right, like he looks exactly the same, picked up where he left off. Christian McCaffrey would be the 101 for me too.
Yeah, no two ways about it. Daniel, we're going to move forward. I thought you were going to get in there for something, but no, you want to keep moving. Let's talk about DJ Moore then, because Matthew, you were talking about this great trio of wide receivers they have in Carolina. Mm-hmm. So DJ Moore started slow last year.
Yeah, he did.
He had a quiet start to last season. This is the thing that I keep doing. I have a stat and I save it in my phone and I forget to get my phone. Okay. His last 6 games, though, were really good. His first 10 games were not quite as hot for DJ Moore. It was inexplicable, right? Like it wasn't like he cratered. It wasn't so bad. It just was also like this is a player that we were drafting like a top 10 wide receiver last year.
I think people misjudged how much Robbie Anderson was going to be used. Robbie Anderson was red hot at the start of last season.
Yes, I have that number here for you in a second.
Curtis Samuel had some big games as well,
especially late. Yep.
Especially late. So they were just. And by the way, that offense suddenly became very. When you have a Christian McCaffrey and your offense is going to run through him, and then he suddenly gets injured very early in the season, suddenly, and you have a new quarterback and a new offense coordinator and a new head coach, right? You know, all of a sudden you're trying to piece things together, and maybe, things happen.
So I think it is important to note that we're going to talk about 4 players with potential fantasy value amongst the pass catchers. Christian McCaffrey, an absolute lock, absent him being off the field. But I think of those 3 wide receivers we're going to talk about, probably 2 have like legit fantasy value. I think it's hard to sustain 3 wide receivers in an offense when your running back's probably going to have 125 or so targets. So is DJ Moore the safest, like the biggest lock among these Panthers wide receivers? Like, is it just like he's the most talented of them 3?
Yeah, I think so. Look, he's the only wide receiver, literally the only wide receiver in the NFL with over 1,200 scrimmage yards each of the last 2 seasons.
Crazy.
So, I mean, like, he has, even though it took him, he wasn't consistent, he didn't get there consistently last year. At the end of the year, the numbers were there for DJ Moore. I don't think anyone questions his talent, like just in the NFL. Like, he drew favorable comparisons to Steve Smith when he was drafted. Yeah. Another Carolina Panther great, right? And I mean, right. Steve Smith is Hall of Famer, right? Should be, at least.
Yeah, I agree.
So anyway, yeah, I think DJ Moore has tremendous talent.
Only thing about last year that I'll be interested to see this year is
the red zone targets.
Well, that's kind of maybe, but he averaged over 18 yards per catch last year. That was really good. He only had 66 catches last season, whereas in previous years we were expecting the possibility of challenging for 90 or 100. So the volume was down a little bit last year, but that was offset enough by the vertical threat, whereas Robbie Anderson, who we presumed to be the vertical threat, was kind of a little bit more of the intermediate passing game threat for Carolina last year. But I think DJ Moore represents the greatest upside of the 3 Carolina wide receivers.
We did our mock draft at the end of the marathon, and I was one of the drafters, and I ended up getting DJ Moore, I want to say, in like the 6th or 7th round. I mean, he went really, really late, which one speaks to the depth at the position, but also I think just people are sort of weirdly out on DJ Moore. I'm his wide receiver 16, Field. You have him at wide receiver 20. Daniel has him at 17. His ADP is wide receiver 21. He's going at the 6-7 turn. So all of us have him ranked above consensus. We all like this Carolina Panthers offense, and we like DJ Moore.
We do, and we also like Robbie Anderson, who last year, as we mentioned, was hot early and then kind of cooled off late. Robbie Anderson, in 5 of his last 7 games, had fewer than 50 receiving yards, but he came out with a man, like his hair was on fire for the first half of last season. Does the split sort of concern you at all, or do you think that over the course of the season, he's still going to end up returning on value, which right now is wide receiver 31 in the 9th round between Chase Claypool and Jerry Jeudy, who his volume, you would think, would be probably much better than both of those players, right?
Yeah, look, I'm at
Maybe
wide
not Jeudy.
Right, I'm at wide receiver 21. His ADP is wide receiver 34. So again, I have this guy ahead of consensus. So do you at wide receiver 29. Daniel hates him for some reason at wide receiver 35. But
a lot of venom from Daniel.
a lot of venom, just a
Nice.
fiery hate.
There's a
Just an
lot of good
angry-
players in fantasy nowadays.
Yeah,
What do you want me to say?
I don't know. Like, you didn't rank Sam Darnold. Like, why do you hate Carolina? Well, I just want everyone in Panther Nation to know.
Sure.
Like, you know what? When you say keep pounding, what we mean is keep pounding Daniel's face.
Wow.
'Cause he does not like you.
Wow.
He does not like you.
For the record, I got CMC 1 overall. I got
whatever.
I got
That
DJ
doesn't
Moore at
count.
17.
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying. I just think the great fan base of the Carolina Panthers, and it's one of the
Deserves
great.
better.
It's one of the great fan bases in the NFL. They deserve better than Daniel Dopp. I apologize on behalf of the 06010 for Daniel Dopp.
You know, Pod Vader
fiery
texted
hate.
me recently. Said he's available most
Stop
weekdays,
it.
Monday
You
through Friday.
stop it.
11 a.m.
Bring back Pod Vader. Hey,
He
here's
loves
what-
the Panthers.
Yeah, sure. Well, he just doesn't anger fan bases. He doesn't just completely alienate some of our audience.
Yeah, and
Just
he's got
right
a
off the bat.
Panthers car too, for the record. So.
He does not actually drive a Panthers car. He drives a Patriots car, as we all know. Anyway, shout out to Pod Vader. Here's what I would say. I think it's tough to take anything away from the Panthers' offense last year. Again, no Christian McCaffrey for the majority of it.
Yeah.
Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback, along with some P.J. Walker in there. And by the way, it was the first year in the NFL for Matt Rule, for Joe Brady, in those positions.
Totally, yeah.
In a shortened season with a shortened offseason, I just think it's tough to take a lot away from there. I think you just have to sort of trust the talent and the scheme, which I am doing.
Again, I agree with that. Again, going with the idea that it's going to be tough if Christian McCaffrey gets his usual passing game usage,
Exactly.
plus DJ Moore, plus Robbie Anderson, is Terrace Marshall Jr., the 59th overall pick in the draft, who slid because of some health concerns. Is he more than just wide receiver insurance, or does his path to fantasy relevance come at the cost of somebody else's success?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think Terrace Marshall, look, he's a big guy. Like, he'll catch some touchdowns. He'll have some nice weeks. But I think in terms of providing consistent fantasy value this year, I don't think you should be drafting him in a standard 10-team redraft league.
I agree.
I love him in Dynasty.
Yeah.
But
a super interesting insurance policy.
Yes.
Because if something happens to Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore, there's enough pedigree there and talent that he'd be pretty useful in right away what we think is going to be an improved passing offense.
Right. But I will also say that for both DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, that I don't necessarily, if they have a decrease in volume because they have Christian McCaffrey back, I'm not as worried about that because, again, I think what that Panthers offense wants to do is predicated on yards after the catch. So I think, they don't necessarily need volume to have fantasy relevancy because I think they're going to get a lot of yards. They're going to have a lot of yardage.
Yeah, I think so, too. Defensively, they should be better, but there'll probably still be some shootouts there in Carolina. All right, time now for a quick blind resume. But before we do that, Daniel, let's go ahead. Matthew, tell us a little bit about ESPN Plus and the Love-Hate Fantasy Show.
Love-Hate Fantasy Show is now up streaming on ESPN Plus,
How is it?
as is our How to Crush Your Draft episode.
Yep.
And we have we're doing one on Monday, right?
We are doing one. No, we're doing one on Tuesday.
Tuesday. So there'll be another episode out on Tuesday afternoon as well. ESPN Plus is a great value, and the only thing that I might say that's a better value, and I don't know, it's tough, but rotopass.com, because with rotopass.com you get ESPN Plus. You get 12 months of ESPN Plus plus 5 other subscription sites that allow you to have customized ranks no matter what format you play. You play 2 quarterback, you play Superflex, you play Dynasty, you play Devy, you play Best Ball. Whatever settings you have, you can get customized ranks plus draft software. Plus, if you play DFS, they have lineup optimizers, tremendous great analysis, lots of great writers as well. Plus, again, everything on ESPN Plus. You can watch the fantasy show with me and Daniel, read your stuff, read Stephania's stuff, Mike Clay's stuff. Everybody, Carabel, Tristan, Todd, Mel, all the great writers and analysts, Bill Barnwell.
Yeah.
Everyone that is a part of ESPN Plus. So it's a great value. Go check it out. If you use the promo code 06010, you can get 10% off at rotopass.com. Get yourself some E+.
Time now to continue with our blind resume. We've got a blind resume, and blind resume is brought to you by Hotwire. Book an expensive hotel for cheap on Hotwire. Download Hotwire, the Hotwire app, to book beyond your wildest means. All bookings are final. Let's take a look had the most touchdown catches through 3 career seasons amongst all active players. All right, one answer is already filled in. That's Calvin Ridley, who's 4th with 26 touchdowns. Number 1, 35 touchdowns. Number 2, 29 touchdowns. Number 3, 27 receiving touchdowns. Again, this is amongst active players. Matthew, you want to kick things off here or no? Venture a guess?
Most touchdowns. Sorry, I missed the top
Most
headline.
touchdowns through 3 career seasons amongst active players.
Through 3 career seasons.
I'm going to go with Mike Evans as one guess.
I was going to say Mike Evans,
Mike
too.
Evans.
'cause he came out
Devontae?
way.
No, not
Not
Devontae.
Devontae.
No,
I wanted
first 3
Devontae.
seasons.
I thought he
I
was
was going to say
bust.
through first 3 seasons, I might say Odell Beckham Jr.
Odell will be a good one as well. He was rock solid through 3 seasons. That's a really good guess.
Yeah.
And the third one, it's going to be a complete curveball here, isn't it? It's going to be like one that we're not at all thinking about.
Actually, I mean, Tyreek Hill. I mean, remember Tyreek Hill had all those return touchdowns his rookie
Yeah, but
year?
it's receiving touchdowns.
Is it
So
receiving touchdowns or
it
total
is.
touchdowns?
I've got receiving touchdowns here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Julio. No, not Julio Jones.
Fields on the right track here.
Fields on the right track.
So it's a completely random player. All right,
I mean, not random,
but relatively obscure is what you're trying to tell me.
you're not drafting him this year, but he is active.
Okay, you're not drafting him this
Randall
year, but
Cobb?
he is active. Is he going with like Larry Fitzgerald? Let's find out.
Oh,
Right
all right,
idea.
well,
Right idea.
okay, what do we got?
Okay.
What do we got, Kyle?
reveal
Let's see
it.
it.
AJ
Thirsty
Green,
Kyle.
duh.
AJ
Hey,
Green.
that was pretty good. We
All
got
right.
it.
But Evans
I
and
don't know
Beckham?
the answers
Yep.
because I can't see.
I know. I'm
It's
sorry you
hard to
can't
read
see
it.
the screen,
Where's
Stephania.
Stephania is in the
audio
studio.
people. I'm having the audio experience, so for the audio people, you'll have to tell them who the people are.
So number
Right.
1, Odell Beckham Jr. with 35. Number
Thank
2,
you.
AJ Green with 29. Number 3, Mike Evans with 27, right ahead of Calvin Ridley, which leads us into the Atlanta
At
Falcons.
26. There you go. But it just goes to show you that when we don't have Stephania wasting guesses, me and
I
Field
knew
are
that
pretty
was
good.
coming.
You know, I just wish the rest of everyone could have been a part of that. It wasn't a pre-show thing. I wish
It
they
was
could have
just-
experienced
it was literally just, it was just
He
us
gets-
hanging out.
Yeah.
Where's Stephania's wine to judge Matthew right
I
now?
know,
I'm trying to
right?
figure
Listen,
out.
I don't
Seriously,
need
guys.
wine to start judging him. But
That's a good point. She's been doing it every day for
I
12
need wine
years.
to tolerate him.
Yes.
That's it. That's it.
We'll start with
Right.
the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, is Matt Ryan, who continues to be the franchise signal caller, as he has been since 2008. And this morning, I talked myself out of my own Matt Ryan ranking, because when you're ranking quarterbacks, I've got him at quarterback 14. I think there's a chance Matt Ryan ends up around quarterback 14 this year, but I don't think he's the 14th most desirable quarterback to start weekly in fantasy. And here's the reason why. Matthew, what's a reasonable, like if you could put a number that you would like out of your quarterback weekly, that you don't think is outlandish, but is like a reasonable average for your quarterback, what's kind of the number, that the target you're looking for? 20?
I was going to say 19 to 20, yeah.
Okay, so let's use 20 because it's round and even. The calculus on that for a quarterback that has negligible rushing value, and Matt Ryan had 92 rushing yards last year,
Right.
is you're basically looking for 300 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and that's a no turnover day to get you to 20 points, right? So you're probably going to need more like 350 plus 2 touchdowns or 303 touchdowns to deliver that 20 points consistently. Matt Ryan had 4 games last year with at least 300 passing yards and multiple passing touchdowns.
Sure.
Now, he had other games where he threw for 447 or something with 1 touchdown, but I think along those lines, if I could, I'd redo my ranking for Matt Ryan and push him down closer to where you have him at quarterback 19.
I'm at 19. He made the hate list. And it's tough to hate quarterbacks because there's so many that are so good. But I'm at QB 19, which is lower than the consensus ranks where he's going in ADP if he's being drafted. He is being undrafted in about 55% of ESPN leagues. Look, if you're in like a deep league, a 2-quarterback league, like I sort of get it, like he's solid. Like he's going to play every game, right? But my concerns are very simply last year in games in which Julio Jones played, he averaged 22.1 fantasy points per game. Great, over the threshold we just talked about. In games without Julio, and there were 7 of them, so a decent sample size, he averaged 14.2 fantasy points per game. And I get it, you got Kyle Pitts there, and Kyle Pitts is all world, but I don't think a rookie tight end, no matter how talented, is going to be able to replace the production of a first-ballot Hall of Fame wide receiver in Julio Jones. Even Julio last year, right? So I am down on Matt Ryan. I agree with you on the rushing. And the other thing is just sort of about roster construction. When you're in that range of quarterbacks, because he's going in, to the extent that Matt Ryan gets drafted in a league, he's being drafted as a QB2. He's being drafted in the 15 to 20 range of quarterbacks. Well, if you're in that range, I would much rather draft Justin Fields, Trey Lance, even Taysom Hill, like one of these guys that we think has tremendous upside that if they get the starting job could get off to a, could be a fantasy superstar. I would rather swing for the fences, or even somebody like Kirk Cousins, who, as we talked about, the other day, has a very easy start of the season schedule. Maybe they just get going there. Or Baker Mayfield, who was a very good fantasy quarterback down the stretch last year. Maybe he keeps it going. He's going in that range. It just feels like there's literally no upside to Matt Ryan, and the floor isn't as high as you would need it to draft him as your starting quarterback.
We see it the same way. Let's talk about Mike Davis, who last year finished as his RB 18, 15 games, had 642 rushing yards, but what really helped was he had 59 catches. 22 for you in your running back ranks, 25 for me, and 24 for Daniel. There are some positive indicators here right now, Matthew, because a good sort of bar trivia would be, who's the backup running back in Atlanta? And not too many people would know the answer to that because they are very, very thin behind Mike Davis.
And I don't think the Falcons know. I mean, we've seen some Kadri Allison. We've seen, I know there's people out there that like Javian Hawkins as well.
Undrafted free agent, yep.
Yeah, out of Louisville. And so, but I don't think the Falcons know who, if something were to happen to Mike Davis, my guess is it would be somewhat of a committee, and they'd sort of see if anyone sort of emerged. But here's the thing on Mike Davis. I think, and we've talked about this with some other players, I think because Mike Davis bounced around early in his career, and because his name's Mike Davis, like it's not it's like just sort of a boring, middle-of-the-road name. He's not a flashy player. I don't think he gets the respect he deserves, which is like, I think Mike Davis is a good football player.
He is a good football player. I agree on that. And he's got a pretty darn clear path right now to getting a lot of carries. And as has been said by many, the key that unlocks fantasy upside for running backs is passing game value.
Yes.
And I mentioned he had 59 catches last year. He had 7 separate games with 5 or more receptions. That was second most amongst all running backs.
He had 12 games last year with double-digit touches. He averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game. And you think about what this offense is going to be like in Atlanta. A couple things. First off, Arthur Smith, former offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans, now the head coach. What did he do in Tennessee? He ran the ball to set up. He ground and pound. He ran the ball to set up play action. He ran when he got in close. Now, he also had Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry is a very different running back than Mike Davis. Derrick Henry is a very different running back than anyone else on the planet. That said, I think the tendencies are correct in that he wants to use his running back, and certainly he's not scared to use his running back on all 3 downs. Mike Davis is a good pass catcher. There are Matt Ryan is somebody who has supported good fantasy running backs in his past. He's not scared to dump it off to the running back. I think the question, Mike Davis is one of those really polarizing players this year in fantasy. I think people are concerned about, can he be the guy? Is he going to keep the job? But to your point, like, the Falcons were one of the teams going into the draft that were rumored to be possibly in on Travis Etienne, on, Javonte Williams, Najee Harris. Like, are they going to, and they didn't draft any running backs at all. They signed Javian Hawkins.
Right. Yeah, no, there's a pretty clear path right now, and he's a pretty good player, especially in the passing game.
And we think that offense is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I do think so, too. And they talked about, like, one thing they've been very clear about, part of the reason why they did not draft the quarterback, this is not a rebuild. So I don't think they're going to be turning to young guys early because they want to get a look. They want to compete. And Mike Davis could wind up being one of the pretty good values in fantasy this year, which is really hard to find amongst running backs. We're going to talk about the pass catchers, including 2 extremely exciting young players in just a moment. But first, you want to get in shape but having trouble staying motivated? Make 5-hour energy shots part of your lifestyle and get the energy boost you need to get fit. We all know you sometimes do not want to go to the gym. So take a 5-hour energy shot to give you the feeling and alertness so you can get to the gym. With 0 sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, cherry, peach, mango, and more. There's a flavor for everyone. Try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or a 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, and that's the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product, you can do so today using our promo code FFF to receive 10% off your first order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today.
Imagine a nice vacation.
Stephania?
Is wine there?
Yes.
It's a must.
Is Matthew there?
Of course not.
What about a view of the parking lot, Stephania? No. So don't book a cheap hotel. Book an expensive hotel for cheap on Hotwire. With hot rate deals, you can stay in a nicer hotel than you ever thought possible. Just select your city, your neighborhood, and the amenities you're looking for, then get your hot rate. Better views, king-size beds, and freshly pressed waffle-woven robes await you. Also, actual waffles. Download the Hotwire app now and book beyond your wildest means. All bookings final. All right, let's talk some pass catchers, Field
Let's
Yates.
do it, Daniel. We begin with Calvin Ridley, the Falcon star wide receiver who was wide receiver 4 last year at nearly 19 fantasy points per game, 96 catches, 1,364 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. The man has no limit to what he is able to do. Stephania, did you go to Falcons training camp?
I did not. But I did some of my reconnaissance on Calvin Ridley because Calvin Ridley had an ankle injury last year. I think most people don't really realize what he was playing through, because he played in 15 games. He was injured in week 8. Then he did not play week 9, and they were fortunate for their timing for their bye was in week 10. So he got 2 weeks off there. He came back and played the rest of the season. But if you'll recall, it was bothering him at times. We talked about him being questionable some games, not practicing every day during the week, occasionally looking like he would come off a play and that foot would be bothering him. He did end up undergoing surgery in the off season, but rehab very, very well. And I'm told that he looks fantastic right now. So no issues going forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen plenty of videos this preseason of him just putting defensive players on skates with his route running. So it sure looks like he looks terrific, Matthew.
Right. And, I mean, like, by the way, you say defensive players, like all pro defensive players.
Xavier
Like,
Howard, Byron Jones.
Yeah,
They had
exactly.
practices with the Dolphins recently. So, yeah, he's impressive as heck, Matthew. He's and I don't want to say this too frequently. Like, there's like 7 or 8 players that I feel this way about, maybe 9 or 10. But there's like 10 guys I think have a legitimate shot to be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy this year. And Calvin Ridley is one of those players.
I
He
agree.
led the NFL in air yards last year with 2,042, so a lot of vertical shots down the field. But he had 96 catches, too. It's not like this was a player who's going to catch 60 passes this year. You just need to make 10 of those long, explosive plays. He might have 95 catches with 10 long, explosive plays. The sky's the limit here.
Averaged over 91 yards, receiving yards a game last year, second most among wide receivers. In the 7 games in which Julio Jones did not play last year, he got almost 12 targets a game. He averaged 19.8 fantasy points per game. I was just going to say that before you did, which is number 1 wide receiver in fantasy is well within the range of outcomes for Calvin Ridley. I'm at wide receiver 5, but we were in the mock draft we did the other night. Damian Woody took him as the number 1 wide receiver off the board. And I was
think
just
number
like,
2.
Was it number 2 after Adams?
Devontae Adams
Went first.
Yep.
He took him at number 2, but he took him ahead of like Diggs and Hopkins. No issue with it. Like, and I said that on air. I'm just like, listen, that's within the range of his outcomes. Get your guys. Ridley wasn't going to come back to him, so that's a guy that he really believes in.
Yep.
You know, so anyway, yeah, absolutely. Top 5 wide receiver. Sky's the limit for Calvin Ridley.
We're going to talk about Kyle Pitts in just a moment, but just quickly, Russell Gage or any other Falcons wide receiver, are they of interest to you this year, or do you think we're maybe too much talk about them?
I think too much talk about them. I think they'll spread the ball around a little bit. I think they'll run 2 tight end sets quite a bit. We're going to talk about that in a second. I'll just say that, like, could Russell Gage have fantasy value? Sure, but doesn't feel like there's a ton of upside there.
72 catches last year, interestingly enough.
Yeah, he had a better season than I think people give him credit for last year, but deeper PPR league, sure.
Right. It's a deeper PPR play because with those 72 catches, 786 yards, so 11.3 fantasy points per game. That's interesting. Deeper league play, maybe a bye week fill-in, but not sure he needs to be drafted as a potential starter in a 10 or 12-team fantasy.
Where he's going in drafts, I would rather take a flyer on somebody that could explode. Russell Gage is a great guy. Like, to your point, you have an injury, you need a bye week fill-in. It's fine if he starts producing, but I feel like there are players in that range where he's going that have much more upside, and I'd rather take a flyer on one of those guys that we've talked about. There's all these kind of late-round flyers. I'd rather take I'd rather draft one of those guys and see if they pop rather than, fine, give me 10 points a week from Russell Gage.
Speaking of upside, Kyle Pitts, one of the most unique players in the NFL right now, drafted 4th overall out of Florida. The guy did everything possible for a tight end. This past season, he was arguably the second best player in the country, just like pure football player. Obviously, number one being Devontae Smith in college football. He ran like a 4.40. He's 245 pounds. He's 6'6". He is one of the most discussed players in fantasy right now. He plays a position where there are not a lot of superstars, and we're starving for the next Travis Kelce or George Kittle or Darren Waller. And right now, he is being ranked close to those players. He's tight end 6 for you, 5 for me, and 6 for Daniel. But his ADP is tight end 5 and in the 6th round, Matthew. This is one that sort of scares me because I think it's possible he bucks the trend, which is that rookie tight ends have not had great success in fantasy football over the past decade. There have been very few of them that have. Kyle Pitts is just not like literally any other tight end that we have seen physically, probably since Vernon Davis back in 2006.
There's no question. I don't think anyone questions his physical ability, his upside, his talent, the very likely success he's going to have in the NFL as both an NFL player and a fantasy prospect. I'm at 6 behind Hawkinson and Andrews in that order for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
Rookie tight ends, and I understand he's the most insanely talented rookie tight end we've ever seen, and the highest drafted one with the most draft capital. But it's very rare for a rookie tight end to be top 10 in fantasy. I believe that the last rookie tight end that finished top 10 in fantasy points was Evan Ingram, his rookie year. And that's because like literally everyone else on the Giants got injured and they had no one else to throw to. Even Gronk, Rob Gronkowski, first ballot Hall of Famer, his rookie year was fine, but it wasn't like, so this is the highest I've ever ranked a rookie tight end. And I just think that with Hawkinson and Andrews, there's a very good chance they lead their teams in targets and end zone targets. On the Falcons, when you have Calvin Ridley, I'm not sure that's the case for Kyle Pitts. So that's just why I have him at 6. But insanely talented, he's going to be a beast.
Fine.
Yeah, I love Kyle Pitts. He's my breakout candidate for the year. As far as your Gronk reference, he was coming off back surgery when he was drafted by the Patriots. So he was going to have a slow start anyway. And Field, you said the thing that I have wanted to say every time I hear the stat on the rookie tight end, which is, why can't he be the first? I think the Falcons believe that he can be, or they wouldn't have invested a 4th-round pick in him. Arthur Smith has already talked about the reason he didn't play in the first preseason game is because they said if we thought he was behind, we would have put him out there. We don't. Yeah. I really think that he is going to finish in the top 5, maybe the top 3 of tight ends.
Yeah, that will be really interesting. So I think what happens here is that like many people are ranking him in the top 5 or 6. The question is whether if he doesn't finish in the top 3, can he narrow the gap that the distance between he and George Kittle or Darren Waller or Travis Kelce is like 1.5 or 2 points a game, or is it going to be like 3 to 4 points per game?
He's currently going as tight end 5. That's his ADP, and he's going ahead of TJ Hawkinson. So I have Hawkinson ranked ahead of him, just purely, and then like at cost, much rather have TJ. And I like Kyle Pitts. Right. I mean, it's my tight end 6. Like, I think the guy's going to be an absolute fantasy superstar. I'm just saying that we have a track record of Hawkinson and Andrews that we don't yet for Kyle Pitts, despite how much we like his talent. And Arthur Smith's offense is tight end friendly.
This is the last thing I'm going to say is that like we obviously love when players succeed and have massive fantasy results. I can't wait to watch Kyle Pitts as much as any other player in the NFL this year. That's how excited I am about him that like if a year from now we're debating between he and Travis Kelce as the number 1 tight end in fantasy, and Kelce, first ballot Hall of Famer, all-time great tight end. No one's gonna
no one's gonna question it. I'm with you.
Well, I'm saying is that like we could be having that conversation. I just want to make it very clear that like I'm saying that not as projecting a regression or anything from Travis Kelce, just how special and unique of a potential talent we have here in Kyle Pitts.
I've been in a bunch of dynasty leagues, and I have seen Kyle Pitts go number 1 overall in the rookie draft, ahead of Trevor Lawrence. Stefania's one of them. Stefania, the number 1 pick in our dynasty league.
That's right.
That the 4 of us do, along with Mike Clay and Thirsty
No, it's
Kyle.
just a 4-person league.
No, but I'm just saying, like, of people that they know, like. The people at home don't know who Ed Eck is. I'm just saying.
Thankfully.
At the Ed Eck right now. Being like, jeez.
Shots fired, Ed.
Or Scott Clark at all_biz.
They should know Scott Clark.
He's already tweeting about the War Room draft order.
How about this? How about Keith Lipscomb is in that league? And I just want to do a quick shout out because Keith also wore his Fun Shirt Friday, although he's not able to be on campus with us here. So I want to show a big, just a quick shout out to Keith because we got a little photo of him here wearing his Fun Shirt. If we can get that up on the screen, maybe
wanna
fingers
see.
crossed. Maybe fingers crossed.
That's
We're getting
Stephania.
there. That's Stephania.
More airtime
Stefania's,
for
I mean,
Stephania.
never bad to put Stephania up on the
Yeah.
screen, though. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
we got Stephania texting, so that's good.
Well,
Great audio.
I was looking for the live feed so I could see Keith's shirt because
Oh.
I can't see it.
Oh, that's
Right
right.
here.
Because of where for people the people aren't watching, people are listening at home. The way we are in the studio, because we're obviously being socially distant and COVID conscious. So Stephania is towards the back of the studio where they don't have a monitor for her. Field and I have a monitor where we can see what's going on air, and then Daniel has his sort of producer setup. So we're kind of all spread out here. We're all 6 feet or more apart. I will say this. So anyway, that Dynasty League, that Not Cool Keith and Thirsty Kyle and Mike Clay and the four of us are all in. These are people that fans of the podcast are aware of.
trying to find Keith's- yeah.
And anyway, yeah. So in that league, Stephania had the number 1 pick, and she took Kyle Pitts. I had the number 2 pick. I took Trevor Lawrence.
Well done by you.
Yeah, well, last year, listen.
Going out on a limb.
Well,
Well,
here's can I
because
tell you
I
something
also
real quickly?
took Justin Herbert last year, so I had a brand new.
Yeah. You have a
Just
young
pointing out.
quarterback, and look, I will say this very quickly about Dynasty. The worst thing in the world is to be 2nd or 3rd place in Dynasty. Like, you have to figure out if you don't have, if it ain't your year, and like I had McCaffrey last year, and like McCaffrey went down. Like, I knew last year very quickly that it wasn't my year. I had a lot of injuries, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to tank for Trevor. And I didn't tank it successfully enough, but anyway, I still managed to get Trevor Lawrence, which I was very happy about.
We got to
because-
go, but you have 10 seconds to describe whether or not Hayden Hurst is a sleeper this year for you or just going to pass because there are too many mouths to feed in this offense.
Look, I think they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, and I do think a lot of Julio Jones' target share. I think Hayden Hurst gets the same role he did last year when he was tight end 14 on a points per game basis, right? Because I think Kyle Pitts gets Julio Jones' target share, which leaves Hayden Hurst to get the same share he got last year. So
Okay.
I do think for deeper leagues, I do think Hayden Hurst is a bit of a sleeper.
And you crammed 18 seconds into those 10 seconds. That's impressive.
Good. Well done
Impressive.
by you. That's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching Fantasy Focus Football Podcast presented by Hotwire. We'll be back Monday to break down week 2 of the preseason. The Chiefs and Cardinals are on ESPN tonight at 8 p.m. with 10 games on Saturday and another 2 on Sunday. Can't wait to watch you. Justin Fields tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
For Field, Daniel, Stephania, Kyle, and Keith, I'm Matthew. Peace out!